authorize the visit.
The vet said the puppy was brought for possibly eating a chicken bone the previous week and acting painful. Upon physical examination, it was palpably and visibly apparent.
Your Honor,
quiet. Palpably, I don't know if that means you can touch it, and visibly, see it with your eyes, apparent that lightning had a foreign body in its neck.
Your Honor, she had the dog for 4 days. She took the dog.
I don't want to listen to me. I'm not listening to you.
She took the dog on the 19th, and we asked her, like, I texted her numerous times asking her if she had the dog. She said no. Then my son went over there on the 24th. On the 24th, my son went over there and seen the dog there. We had to call the cops to get the dog back. If she had our dog and we knew about it, why wouldn't she just give us the dog back instead of us having to call the cops to make her give us the dog back?
Listen to me, Miss Morrison, I don't want you to act stupid. On what date did you find the dog missing?
On the 19th.
You found the dog missing on the 19th?
Yes,
Correct.
ma'am.
That is not true.
And on what date did you find out that she had the dog?
On the 23rd.
On the 19th, the dog was operated on the 22nd.
I'm sorry.
If you say another word, I'm going to throw you out.
Okay.
Would you like me to do that?
No.
The dog was operated on the 22nd of December.
We were not aware of that, Your Honor.
Well, now you're aware of it.
Correct.
Now you should have been aware of it. You were entrusted with an innocent mouth. You were entrusted with an animal that had eaten a chicken bone that was visible, you could see with your eyes, and touch it. And if you're too busy, and your husband is too busy, and grandpa's too busy, then what you do is you don't get 2 dogs. One dog you didn't take care of, dug a hole under a fence, a 25-pound chihuahua, and went and got pregnant next door, and then came back and you had puppies that you couldn't take care of.
Your Honor.
Explain me.
It's in my pocket and tell me it's raining.
First, I didn't.
This is my apartment neighbor, Maddie. Maddie has been persecuted by cops and believers, and we're just chilling in these units on pensions, doing what men in their 30s do. But we've been drinking a bit today, and it's reminded me of an unpublished early draft version of the No Sacrifice song by now Sir Elton John. And I was reading the lyrics, and he goes, it's no sacrifice, kill Jesus for the monarch. There's a dyke queen living with no king, cock, shaft, or balls. But it's no sacrifice. Oh, oh. Dyke queen living with no king, cock, shaft, or balls. And apparently that was written for Diana. Before Buckingham Palace didn't hoist the flag in commemorance of her death or acknowledgement of her death or anything like that. So I just thought I'd share it with you all. It'll go up on my YouTube probably with the other videos. I wisely predict that the next cliche that needs to be removed from the epistemic efforts of religious believers involved in medical science, neurology, or any form of psychiatric or psychological research needs to be the famous right-wing Christian cliche, seeing is believing. Take that and apply it to the scans of, someone's terrors or nightmares. You obviously can't afford to be in a professional position as exonerated as that and then spit on the citizenry like that. So I think, it's a banal statement. It's what a cliche means. If you look it up in the dictionary, it's an intense statement. Seeing is believing. It's like saying peeing is believing. So every time you go to the toilet and piss, you're believing in something. It's obviously ridiculous. And that's something that the religious right have to come to terms with. And by my every estimation, it's just a matter of time till they do. Because there's no heaven, no hell. There's no afterlife. If there is, we won't know about it until we're dead. As Prince wisely said on the Batman soundtrack in the 80s. So that's where I think that issue's at, and we're certainly not going to outer space or the mantle, crust, core, and lava-filled center of the Earth, of what we now know as the spheroid Earth. So all concepts of heaven and hell, as defined by the right-wing fundamentalist Christian evangelist movement, is definitely bullshit. Episcopal liberal bishops even will say it's bullshit. The rest of them just have to catch up and get with the facts, because none of them can argue in defense of their points as best I've been able to tell since the start of this millennium. Early this decade, my old chum Jezza from school, who I helped him get a job with Capital Chemist Group, and I encouraged him not to devote his life to that particular franchise, and encouraged him with his pursuits in law. But he put me in check, connotative to some sort of case, or attempted case, in his living room at Derry Street, Monash. And he was looking at the TV, and he was like, Mario Kart. And I straight away went, what are you bothering to attempt to establish here? Because, I was teaching primary schoolers how to play Mario Kart when I was in high school, with responsibility. I've always taken Mario Kart very seriously and sat stationary on a chair and concentrated on my skills. But the ironic part of that whole inquiry was that I just looked at the back of Jez's head and recalled an afternoon where we were all kids, but he had kind of ground pounded his brother Seb onto the carpet in the living room, and his brother Seb was going, a cow's on me, a cow's on me, and Jez was just sort of ground pounding him. And so I wondered if, because Jesus doesn't seem to have outgrown the right-wing Christian thing where you believe that genes and genetics cause certain behaviors, and then it's about, a repressed sexual attraction to your mom or your dad or your brother or your sister or all that sort of shit. I've had step families, and I didn't really get into SBS till about age 13, but I just stood silently while I watched Jezza make that little inquiry, because I looked at the back of his head as he looked at the TV going, Mario Kart. And then I just looked at the ground in the living room, and I just remembered him ground pounding his little brother. And his little brother going, cows on me, cows on me. I know there were kids under the age of consent. It's just funny how, I made the decision to be non-violent and non-aggressive at about age 12. Especially towards girls. I will admit that Christianity got me pissed off at certain dudes. But then I boiled that down to the Bible. So once I had deconverted from Christianity, I started to be consistently more gentle in the company of females and males. Yeah, the Bible definitely says a lot of disgraceful things about subservient roles for women in relation to men. Wives must submit to their husbands as their husband does to the Lord, for the head of the church is Christ, and the head of the house is the man. So woman should be to man as man is to Christ, and yada 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 yada. Shit like that. And that's why I like burning Bibles to this day, because if you are a biblical literalist, the rights of women will be disgraceful. That is all. I've, for many years, had American friends that I've talked to some extent about politics, and we've all sort of come to the conclusion that, if you're Australian and you look up the Human Rights Act, you'll find very little stated and clearly established as to what constitutes the political structure of monarchist or monarchism thought. You only really find the Queen saying, to what greater source of inspiration can we turn than the imperishable truths to be found in that treasure house called the Holy Bible. And so we're all like, yes, it's very fascinating. You're elevated by the murder of a first century Jewish, possibly bisexual male in 33 AD, whose life isn't accounted until 70 AD, and who gets, his story gets retold until it's a political murder redescribed as a human sacrifice appointed by a non-existent God. Okay, and we think, well, and this Queen has gone on to, salute Nazism. She's gone on to, you can look up articles that will say, your royal Heilness, H-E-I-L, because during World War II, the British monarchy was in support of Adolf Hitler's gassing of Jews. So we must conclude that whatever interpretation Elizabeth II has on the Bible and whoever Jesus of Nazareth was, it's definitely taken a racial turn for the worse, because she obviously was in support of the gassing of Jewish foreigners, irrespective of their age, sex, or anything like that. So we have to wonder if she just merges and mashes all these gospels together, and she's like, yeah, God's with me. God's appointed me to be queen. And I have to wonder if she cares more about the ridiculous Bible, which I proudly burn from time to time and piss on and use as toilet paper and various things like that. But that's okay, because it's a Bronze Age book. But if I were the Queen, I would care more about monarchism, political structure, than I would about the Holy Bible. And I would be thinking, well, I'm the Queen. If I want to represent and portray monarchism as a political power with integrity to my people, then I should have a king. And the reason I don't think Queen Elizabeth II has a king is because she hasn't, in terms of rights, she hasn't reinforced or helped constitute or help describe what constitutes biphobia, bisexual harassment, or the persecution of bisexuals, or what constitutes a bisexual courtship or a bisexual sex act. Instead, she's fixated on this, according to Mark's Gospel, this suicidal torture and murder of a Bronze Age Jewish man 2 millennia ago. And she loved it so much that she was prepared to salute Hitler when he wanted to gas and kill X million many more Jews. And now she has no king. She has no male. She's sitting on a throne, probably with servants to stick ovulatory vagifem pessaries to lubricate her vagina. And as she sits on this throne with no king, and she has the UK, and she has Australia, and her head is embossed on all of the coins and currency, and she's on all the notes, and yet she has nothing to stand up for and represent about monarchism integrity than to say, yeah, I'm just a single queen with no king, and Freddie Mercury died of AIDS, and he sung about me being a killer, and whatever, I supported World War II, and I have no king, but there's Jesus and God, and there's 4 Gospels, and Adam and Eve, and we all came from incest, and I have no king, but the monarchy is important. And I just think she could really, Diana was clearly deterred from her interpretation of the political structure of the monarchy during her lifetime and her public service. And the Queen seems to have been silent on counter-addressing all the valid points that Diana had to raise. So I think now that Diana has tragically passed, it wouldn't do any harm to the UK or Australia if Queen Elizabeth II stood up and said, defined what constitutes, in political terms, independent of the Bible, a political monarchy's power structure, and explained why it's important or not important to her, why she doesn't have a king now, why she doesn't think in principle having a king by her side is important, and if she doesn't think having a king by her side is important, why does she think that monarchism is so important? And conversations like that, like on Q&A, where like Richard Dawkins is debating Cardinal George Pell, and viewers can SMS ping in questions. I think it should be like that with Queen Elizabeth II. That is all. I think as far as entertainment goes, in principle, and I've mused upon this issue since college. My best subjects in college were music and multimedia studies, and I explored with documentaries and videos and music clips the concept of censorship and when is it appropriate, when is it too much, how when is it relevant. And because I've come to the same conclusion as many artists and my Baptists and lots of people, that art is Socratic in essence. It's a question mark, and it's designed to help people think for themselves and to find and discern answers for themselves. And an artist can't really take responsibility for direct responsibility for how their art is interpreted by an onlooker or a person perceiving and experiencing it, because they have no idea how the subject is viewing the performance. You could get 10 people together to look at the Mona Lisa, and 2 of them could insist she looks suicidal, and then the next one says she just seems prim and proper, and the next one says she seems bored, and the next one says she looks tired. And it's all very different depending on the person perceiving it. And I just think that censorship to me is always in principle a bad idea, because all the arguments made in favor of upholding strong and intensive censorship moralistic principles boil down to constructionist cultural abstractions that historically boil back to this country being stolen from the Aborigines And you know, white politicians today don't want to spend a lot of time talking about how Australia was stolen from Aborigines and white men used to, you know, a white man could have 20 abos in chains. They don't want to talk about that much today, you know. And yeah, sure, you can look up the Human Rights Act and read that top paragraph that says, you know, we acknowledge the original owners of this land, the Aborigines. It's like, well, yeah, you acknowledge it to connotative to that top eighth of a paragraph. I mean, you've given them a tent embassy on the grass, on the lawns of old Parliament House, when you probably, as far as you are concerned about history and the hows and whys of how history repeats itself, and history is written by the winners, and yada 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 yada. By all measures of those sorts of statements, you should probably be giving Aboriginal representatives of Australia in the present day a more than a tent embassy on the lawns of a disowned and old and outdated Parliament House. You should probably give them... I came into this world as a reject. Look into these eyes, then you'll see the size of the flames. In principle, the disgrace of working for the co-founder of the Capital Chemist franchise, Roger Markby Nelson Tall, who, along with Gary Cairns, the Freemason, who's part of a religious movement that believe in population culling. And that's fascinating since, you know, his industry makes approximately $3.8 billion a year on antipsychotic drug rebates from the Health Insurance Commission through the Pharmaceutical Benefit Scheme for mentally ill people. But when you work for Gary personally, that's exactly what it's like. It's like he's sizing you up thinking, you know, do you deserve to meet a partner and fucking procreate and have children and raise a family of your own? Are you worthy? Like, prove yourself worthy. Come to my Templar and fang out a sword and look at my bald patch and I'm Gary the Lord and all this shit. And I've been contemptuous of belief systems probably since the end of of high school. I'm not sure how exactly, I can't pin it down to one cause as to where it came from, but I just had this premonition that for art to flourish and succeed and bloom in Australia, you know, we have freedom of expression, but then artists in Melbourne have been jailed on the grounds that they have no legally protected right to freedom of speech. And I think I should have fell back on the Rights Act saying you have freedom of expression, because freedom of expression should at least apply to the larynx and esophagus. That's what I find ironic about the history of Australia. It's like a racial cover-up. It's like, let's steal this land from these native Aboriginal people who are very creative, and let's plant a bunch of white Caucasian Christians to build a Parliament House, with the exception of lovely Julia Gillard, who I want to get back in power, and I'm prepared to egg houses to get her back in power. She's the only one I voted for. The others can't really find me because I've already studied their belief systems. Gillard was... It's not just because I want a woman in power, otherwise I would have kissed Queen Elizabeth II's sphincter. It's because I want a non-believer. Someone who comprehends doubt, reason, and who doesn't say, you know, in the name of the Aussie spirit, get male pattern baldness from stress at work, and will say it's your genetics, and tra-la-la-la-la, and you'll live forever in outer space after you die, and pay thousands for your funeral arrangements because you're going to float into the Southern Cross constellation and then you'll live forever. And there's Uranus and Jupiter and Saturn and there's Dancer and Pratzer and Blitzen and Santa. And I just think a solitary human life should be looked upon with more dignity than that. But for people in power who don't pay much attention to what is signified by a country and a culture's history, if they don't step back and take the time to think about all of what that entails, I think they'll make for a bad leader. And I don't think that Miss Gillard was a bad leader. And I always have wanted a female Prime Minister, but what impressed me the most about her was the fact that she was prepared to publicly announce to the press that she was non-religious. And she would mention the Secret Service in her public speeches. And I'm beginning to wonder whether, a bit like with what I've heard about Gough Whitlam getting fucked over by the Queen in the 70s, whether something like that repeated and Gillard got her grandstand cut short for similar reasons. At worst, I think if this land is acknowledged to have been stolen from Aboriginal foreigners by white Christian Caucasians, then, the Queen, who obviously doesn't care too much about the political structure of monarchism in and of itself, because if she did, she'd have a king and be proud of it. Instead, at most, what she can say is she's obsessed over the killing of white Jewish asexual, bisexual, heterosexual males, so long as, there's some electroshock from the amygdala to the ball sack at the time that the nails hammered through their wrist and feet into a crucifix, sufficient that it can only be respectful that a loincloth be placed upon them while they're bleeding the shit out of them, and then we celebrate that murder by ceremonially reciting poems and pretending that we've eaten the body of Bronze Age Jewish bisexual murder victims. No. You can tell which Australian women have grown up thinking, oh, yes, your worship, in relation to Queen Elizabeth II, because they'll all have curly hair. If I learn to ease back and go, I don't give a fuck about these satellites, Queen Elizabeth, their hair will flatten, uncurl a bit, and start to hang straight. But yeah, to my mind, I'm not forcing. I've always hated false dichotomies. Like, do you like boys or girls? You're at a roundabout with 7 turn-off streets. Do you want to turn left or right when there's 7 turn-off streets? I hate false dichotomies, false either-or situations. And to my every estimate, the bisexual health rights movement that bloomed in the 60s with people like Patti Smith and David Bowie, and that inspired the career of Marilyn Manson in the early 1990s. I think it absolutely deserves to be built on and defended. And even for everything I've studied in philosophy and art and every subject, music, multimedia, art, philosophy, to me it's probably the most important thing, is that movement that started in the 60s. And the Beatles weren't against it. Freddie Mercury and Queen weren't against it. Bowie, who released over 50 albums in his career, was absolutely ecstatic about it. And to this day, we don't have a legally stated and defined, clear-cut definition of what, within the confines of a physical home property or a portion of land constitutes a bisexual courtship act or a biphobic bisexual harassment act. And neither of those have been laid out in policy. And the reason I think that religious thinkers in politics aren't really fuming about getting this question answered and addressed and solved anytime soon is because they want to believe in hell and heaven. And they want to believe that a God who's dead and never existed somehow sent Jesus of Nazareth to get crucified in order to make sure that everybody lives forever. And I'm very insulted by that notion, because to my best estimate of studying the Gospels and debating them with theologians and apologists and various people online and reading the works and studying the works of Episcopal bishops, if Jesus truly cared at the heart for every person that he met and encountered, he could well have been a bisexual male in the first century, but at that point in time and in that culture there was no such thing as the word bisexual. So that word didn't exist. And it just keeps getting reiterated in the later Gospels, like in John, where it talks about God sending his Son to die, that those who believe in him shall not perish but have eternal life. You've got a male God sending another male to die so that believers will live forever. And to me, it just looks like a symbolic scream out for respecting affection between any adult gender to any member of any other adult gender. And that's all. I mean, what Christian is going to turn around to me and say, no, heaven's real. I've looked at a atlas of the universe, and I've looked at the Milky Way galaxy. Once we all die, we're going to float into stars and the Milky Way galaxy, and we're going to suck into the black hole, and we're going to live forever. No one's going to say that. You know, the earth was thought to be flat when the Bible was written. And what believers are going to say, well, if you don't do what's right by God, you're going to desecrate into the core and mantle of the earth, and you're going to burn in hell forever. No believer's going to want to stress that point too far in argument either, because there's obviously no such place as hell. You know, heaven and hell were first thought of at a time when the most intelligent Jewish scribes and Hebrew scribes on the planet were absolutely adamant that Earth was a two-dimensional plane, flat in its geometrics. We obviously now know that's absolutely not true. And you could even look up to my mind, and this has been steady conviction since about the year 1966, 1996, 1997, is that the two greatest modern rock artists, if you want to call them metal, new metal, heavy metal, or whatever, but the two greatest artists from that point in time onwards have been Jonathan Davis and Korn and Marilyn Manson. And without fail, they have been my two favorite artists ever since the 8th grade. Ever since the high school, 8th grade at One-Ass High School, where a classmate of mine named Natalie Ovchinik lent me CDs of live Korn and Marilyn Manson. At the time I was a devout Christian, and so I listened to live first because I was very weary about the content on these CDs, but I now look back and I regard Natalie as being the closest approximation to teenage lifesaver, because I've studied the progression of Live and I'm not so impressed, but the trail of progression for Marilyn Manson, Korn, and Jonathan Davis, I'm over and over again overwhelmed and constantly and unendingly impressed with their efforts. So I'm a kid whose blood parents tried to kill each other when I was 5, who embraced a step family till the age of 10, approximately, until my stepfather died of cancer, and then had another step family who was, hitting my mum and sister and reading the Bible in church, and a total hypocrite. And my mother's got a new another partner now, and I didn't care to change my surname to his surname because I'm pretty much too proud of the efforts made by my first stepfather. But as far as music and art goes, Marilyn Manson and Korn are my 2 favorite bands, have been since puberty, and I will always defend their integrity, because there's no way that I would be where I've ever been in any job or a professional situation, and there's no way I would have achieved anything that I've achieved if it weren't for their so-called bad influence. So I'll always stand by them. I'm here with Matty. This is my main man, Matty Tierney. He's drunk, and this is his favorite words from the Bible. If you're going to read a Bible, these are the only words from the Bible that he wants you to think about and consider. What?
Hi, motherfucker.
Whoa. What's that again? Say it again.
Eat shit and die, motherfucker.
Okay, you have it all, audience. Matty Tierney's own favourite words for the Bible are eat shit and die. And that, to my mind, is a commentary on where white Australian culture is at. It's why Centrelink should pay me my financial hardship claim.
Give me money too.
And that's about that. I want to egg Bert Newton's house. We have just wiped this table down with various spray and wipes, but this, do you see this red spiral here? While I know where it came from, it was not made with any known materials stored in my house at the time. It's not lipstick, it's not cosmetics, it's not creative markers or textures or paint or any kind of creative material. Try and shoot it from different angles so you can see it clearly. See it there? So this was shortly after watching the Kill For Me film clip that Marilyn and Johnny Depp made with some beautiful women. And I was sitting on this chair here watching the clip, and now we have this spiral. Where did it come from? See how I can't even spray and wipe and so yeah, this red spiral, it very much reminds me of the 2009 Capital Chemist Christmas party, where this Freemason I used to work for, Gary Cairns, he was inclined to make numerous references to me while in private at home, and in particular a lot of references to Marilyn Manson's Doppelhers from the Golden Age of Grotesque. But as you can see, it just doesn't wipe off. In fact, pens, textures and permanent markers are beginning to wipe off more. So I'll give you a quick tour of my property and show you. This is my kitchen. There are no art materials anywhere in this kitchen. Some Vegemite. No textures in the freezer. No textures in the fridge. It's my DJ equipment. There's no textures there. There's some DVDs I rented from the ACT library in Dixon. Here there are some pens, but actually I don't think I've seen a felt tip marker or a permanent red texture with the type of point or tip that could generate that shape of that spiral. My cosmetics are kept here in the in the bathroom, but as you know, they would obviously wipe with spray and would wipe off my table instantly, as my toothbrush, toothpaste and razors. Anyway, if anyone reads this, listens to this video clip, I would urgently suggest someone with supreme authoritarian powers to sit down and have a interrogative conversation with Gary Cairns, the Freemason, and Roger Toll about their work and quantum mechanics principles. I've studied quantum mechanics to a certain degree, but yeah, ask Gary Cairns and Roger Toll about yeah, if they might in their pharmacy career have something to do with anything to do with quantum mechanics. You could ask me, but I might get another death threat. 18th of September 2003, Royal Theatre. Remember your baptism forever. This is my friend Lisa.
Good morning, Luke. Yeah, it's fine. That's fine.
You want to say anything?
No, what would I say?
Just you've got all your
Yeah.
sum up your philosophy.
Yeah. Trying to think of something for Kingston Markets to do. Do you like this real estate logo that I did? Top one?
There you go, Privacy Act. Deterioration.
Peace delegation, and leading the party was the German politician Matthias Erzberger.
They're driven through this devastated countryside. Now, the German delegation believes that they're deliberately taking this roundabout journey to show them the devastation Texas has suffered under German occupation.
When the cars reached Amblier, the Germans were then transferred to a train. With the blinds pulled down to ensure secrecy, they proceeded to its final destination. A gun sighting in the forest of...
These sort of lyrics, I can see why a girl under the age of 10 might want to raise questions about them, but if I was her father, I would turn to her and I would say, look, the lyrical themes explored in this song aren't really all that relevant until you pass a certain age, until you pass puberty. Buy Gippsland Dairy, mango, passion fruit, twist yogurt from your local capital chemist. Deterioration.
Ladies and gentlemen, live via satellite from Los Angeles, California, Mr. Antichrist superstar himself, Marilyn Manson.
How's it going, New York? I chose to speak to you in a square because I think we're kind of conditioned to listen to people when they're in the shape of a square. And also, here in Hollywood, this is where we give people what they want, violence, I guess. That's what it seems to come down to. But what I wanted to talk to everyone today about, I don't really want to preach, I just want to more bring up some questions. And since I always tend to be a scapegoat, I thought we'd talk about blame. Right now everybody wants to blame music, they want to blame movies, but you know, have we forgotten that we have a dead guy hanging from a tree in our living rooms? And that's something that we've worshipped all our lives. If you think about the crucifix as the greatest mass-market piece of merchandise in the history of the world. I've always found that to be kind of interesting. We haven't really sat down and talked about that on the news. And also wondered why nobody cares when an adult commits some senseless act of violence. They don't want to have a reason why. You know, it's only when a kid does it. You know, Oswald, well, he was a commie. Timothy McVeigh, well, he's crazy. What about Bill Clinton? Why did he shoot all those bombs and kill all those foreigners? Oh, well, he's the president. You know, that's the American way. But I think what's really begun to confuse people now, why we're in this state of chaos and PC, nonsensical uptightness, it's white teenagers. That's the real enigma. Why are they mad? They're middle class, they're white, they're spoiled. Their parents even buy some of them guns. You know, what do they have to be mad about? Is it because they know America's a lie? Or is it because we make them feel like they're never good enough? You know, you're never good enough for the scholarship, for the car, for the girl. Never good enough to be famous for 15 minutes. Is it the first race in kindergarten where it starts when mom's yelling, get the white ribbon, get the white ribbon. Oh, I got the yellow ribbon. And the mom's, oh, well, you know, it's okay, you know. Then the high school football games and soccer moms screaming, kill him, kill him. You know, the ancient Rome reappears. You got moms, you got kids, they all want blood, you know, they always have. It's not new. You You know, people pretend like just because Maury Povich or Fox News or Montel Williams says times are violent, that it's something, you know, it's brand new. But the thing that kind of struck me that has been avoided and ignored, because people always want to point the finger at someone like me because I'm an obvious and easy target because I look like I cause problems, and I do, you know, I try to. But I think just like the gladiator, the sports hero is the icon and the status quo, you know, more than Elvis or James Dean ever was. You know, he's in the Wheaties, he's at McDonald's, he's in the movie. You know, he even has his own talk show. Well, he did in some cases. But what is that saying to kids when we think about it for a second? Sports. Physical prowess is more important than intelligence, knowledge. You know, is that encouraging America to be not only more violent but dumber? Are we going backwards on the evolution chart? You know, I actually would like to check, but it's gone because the creationists have taken it away. You can't even find the evolutionary chart anymore. I think, you know, everyone growing up knows that jocks ruled the school. You look at a movie like The Outsiders or Heathers. You know, the nerds, the throwaways, the thinkers, the daydreamers. These are the beaten. These are the kids that can't drink out of the water fountain today. You know, I don't see anyone standing up for their civil rights. And then we say, are we surprised why they're mad or why they end up dead? You know, why the violence? You know, you made them, America. You know, what do you expect? Look at Woodstock, for example. Well, it was supposed to be hippies and love and PC and United Colors of Benetton and bottled water. But instead, they got riots, fire, and rape. You know, and part of it, I think, is this phenomenon that, to me, is related to sports. And it's when rap and rock began to mix, and we created this oxymoron called jock rock. And to me, it's kind of like people come to a party that they don't understand, but they're just smart enough to know that they're the stupidest people there. So that makes them mad. I think that's what Woodstock was. You had these white kids in football jerseys trying to make rock and roll a sport by raping girls and beating each other up, and everybody's surprised, you know, why, you know, it's the music, you know. I think, you know, part of man's evolution is always to compete. I think parents, you know, they're driving their kids, particularly through sports, you know. You got O.J. Simpson. Oh, he can't be guilty. He's an American hero, you know. We were just about to put his face on the $3 bill. And then, you know, this Ray Caruth guy, this NFL wide receiver just charged with murdering his pregnant girlfriend. You know, people, did they ask why? Why'd he do it? You know, no one cares why, you know. Ray Lewis, this NFL linebacker, charged with a double homicide in Atlanta on Super Bowl Sunday, the most violent day of the year, with the most expensive commercial time, of course. He's out on bail. You know, he's charged with murdering 2 people, and he's out on bail. You know, you got Charles Manson sitting in prison for conspiracy, sentenced to death, and you got this other guy walking the streets because he's a sports hero. One story that really struck me and got me thinking about this was a few years ago. There was this teenage punk rocker kid who was run down in an IHOP parking lot by a white jock and his girlfriend in Dad's Cadillac. And this boy died because he looked different, and he was run down by a drunk piece of shit that hated him and had always picked on him. And it was a situation where you've got 6 kids who, you know, got their noses pierced, and you've got 30 jocks who are the popular kids at school, and they're picking on them. They're calling them fags, they're calling them whatever. And So this thing happens. This guy kills this kid and is clearly guilty. You know, his guilt is admitted. And guess where this all-American athlete is? He's in college. You know, the jury felt the punk rocker deserved to die because he looked the way he did. And not only was he killed, but then in the trial, he was killed again because they, you know, criticized his lifestyle because he didn't, you know, wear a Tommy Hilfiger shirt and khaki pants, you know. And then the killer was even applauded at graduation because he was a football star. The American dream, strong, normal. He never spent a day in prison. So who do we blame? You know, everybody wants to say, you know, too much violence today, you know. Did anyone forget about the Civil War or the Bible or Shakespeare? You know, violence isn't brand new. And I don't even think seeing violence is the problem. I think there's a more serious problem that seeing violence as a solution to solve a problem is what is sending a bad message to kids growing up. You know, even going back to a Western, the hero kills the villain, saves the day. Children grew up in World War II and they learned that total violence was the answer. And I think that that's where, you know, a dying culture began, and a dying culture kills everything that it touches. You know, so these kids grew up learning this. They pass these values down with pride. We won the war, but you know, damn that Hitler, genocide and all those terrible things he did. You know, forget if, you know, we dropped the bomb, but that's different. You know, we're Americans and we believe in God. So that's where they kind of create what I like to call the God Band-Aid. You know, that's when you got a problem, you stick the God Band-Aid on, you know. My record's dirty and violent, and but I just won a Grammy. So, you know, I want to thank God. Or, you know, well, someone just killed my daughter. And they're like, oh, well, it's okay, she's with God now. Oh, okay. Or, you know, you killed somebody. But I believe in God now, so, you know, it's okay. Then all the other people with the God Band-Aids see that. And they go, oh, he's like us, he's okay, let's let him go. You know, so bad parents make bad kids, you know, that's the way I look at it. That's why I asked the question, you know, I put this up on my website. I said, is adult entertainment killing our children, or is killing our children entertaining adults? And I think that's kind of the question we got to ask ourselves today. And you have to ask yourself that every time you watch the hungry cameras at the crime scene, or at the funeral, or at the plane crash, interviewing the victims, you know, 24-hour footage, watching the guy blow his brains out on the LA freeway, you know. You know, I'm in a square right now. You're looking at me. I'm looking at myself in a monitor. You know, we sit in front of the TV, and we are the TV. We're a copy staring at a copy, at a copy, at a copy. It's like the guy on Jerry Springer, who is always looking at the monitor to see if he sees himself. And that becomes a loop, because you see it and you see yourself again and again and again. So, you know, eventually it's a Xerox that's so degenerated, we don't know which came first. And that's where we are. That's what I'd like to leave you with.
Come back to the webisodes.